Good morning, children.
Good morning, ma'am.
We were learning about the different parts of a flower, and you know, flower is a reproductive part of a plant, and it has got 4 different worlds. And we learned in detail about these 4 worlds also. Just name those worlds, Savio, which are the 4 layers of a flower. Where you're searching? 4 layers of a flower. You don't have to dig inside. I think he's checking somewhere. Answers. Yes, Savio? Hadivi?
Flower.
Okay. Which are the 4 parts?
Stem.
Stem, root, leaves. These are the 4 layers of a flower. I'm asking only about a flower. Yes?
Stamen.
Stamen. In order. Say it in order. I should make you sit in class 7, I think. 7th class. Hadivi?
Sepals, petals, stamen, and pistil.
Stamen, pistil, again stamen and pistil. Yes, Lolita. Once again, Hadidi.
Ma'am, sepals, petals,
Staples.
sepals,
No. Second one,
petals,
petals. First one, sepals, then petals.
sepals,
Third one?
petals, stamen, then pistil.
Okay. Savio, where are you? Where are you, Savio? His connectivity went. And all those whose videos are off, I'm going to remove you from the class. Shall I do it now? Just 2 minutes for you to turn it on. After that, I'll remove you from the group. If you are not interested in turning the video on, don't join, don't attend the class. I'm saying it seriously. Afterwards, don't feel bad. After I have removed you from the session, don't feel bad. Okay. So these are the 4 worlds of a flower: sepals, petals, stamen, and carpel. So we learned about the different parts of a flower. And next what we are going to learn is about pollination. Pollination means transfer of pollen. It's a transfer of pollen grains. Where are pollen grains present? Where are pollen grains present? Inside?
Flowers.
That we know. Stamen. Inside stamen, anther is there, or as a part of stamen. Stamen has got 2 parts, anther and filament. Inside the anther, pollen sac. Inside the pollen sac, pollen grains are there. And inside the pollen grains, what are present? What is present? Yes? Gametes. Male gametes are present inside the pollen grains. And pollination is a transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma. Transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma. Remember, pass, the mnemonic pass. PAS. P for pollen grain, A for anther, S for stigma. PAS. Transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma is known as pollination. Pollination are of 2 types. You can classify pollination broadly into 2 types: cross-pollination and self-pollination. I'll repeat again. Pollen grains should be transferred to stigma. Only then fertilization can take place. You know that in fertilization, the male gamete should fuse with the female gamete. For that, male gamete should reach the female gamete. So as the first step, the pollen grains having the male gamete should reach the stigma. It should reach the stigma. Only then that can be followed by fertilization. So what is pollination? It's a transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma. I told you to remember PAS. Transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma is known as pollination. Pollination are of 2 types: self and cross pollination. And first, let's see what is meant by self-pollination. Before seeing the explanation, you can see the figure given over here. Just concentrate on the figure now. A, B, C. In the picture, they have marked A, B, and C. C is cross-pollination. A and B are self-pollination. Now let's see the figure closely. In A, from the same flower, pollen grains are falling on the stigma of the same flower. It is limited to the same flower. Yes? Whereas in the second figure means B, letter B. From one flower, from the anther of one flower to the stigma of another flower. This is one flower, this is another flower, flower 1, flower 2. So it is between two flowers, but both these flowers are belonging to the same plant. I'll say once again, either it should be transferred to the stigma of the same flower or to another flower of the same plant. If you see the figure, you can understand it better. I'll show the explanation. Self-pollination is a transfer of pollen grains from the anther of a flower to the stigma. Children, this part is common for all. Whether it is self or cross-pollination, this much is common. Transfer of pollen grains from the anther of a flower to the stigma. Up to here, it is common for, same for cross and self-pollination. The difference is in the second part of the sentence. Transfer of pollen grains from the anther of a flower to the stigma of same flower. Same flower. See here, same flower or another flower. Another flower of the same plant. Then it is self-pollination. Children, don't by heart it. Understand the meaning and then learn. Otherwise, you will get confused. Once again, I'll repeat again. It is a transfer of pollen grain. So first part you have to learn because it's common for self and cross. Without knowing whether it is cross or self-pollination, first part is same. That is transfer of pollen grains from, you know where are pollen grains present? From anther. Transfer of pollen grains from the anther of a flower. Transfer of pollen grains from where? From the anther of a flower. To where it should be transferred? To stigma. And the stigma belongs to which flower? That makes all the difference. The transfer of pollen grains from anther of a flower to the stigma of the same flower or another flower of the same plant. Either to the stigma of the same flower or another flower of the same plant is known as self-pollination. Once again, the transfer of pollen grains from the anther of a flower to the stigma of the same flower or another flower. If it is another flower, that should be of the same plant. Okay? Now, let's see what is cross-pollination. This is taking place between flowers belonging to two different plants. You know, seeing the picture itself, you can understand that these two plants are of the same kind. They belong to same type or they are of the same kind. From the picture itself, it's clear. Same kind of plant, but two different plants. Plant 1, plant 2. Two different plants of the same kind. So let's see what is cross-pollination. Transfer of pollen grains from the anther of a flower to the stigma. I told till here it is common. Transfer of pollen grains from the anther of a flower to the stigma of another flower. This is another flower of a different plant. This is a different plant of the same kind. You cannot transfer or pollination is not possible from a jasmine flower to a rose flower. Even if pollination happens, it won't be followed by fertilization. It should be belonging to the same kind. Only then it will be effective. Pollination will be effective. I'll repeat again. Remember the picture and then you will be able to explain. Transfer of pollen grains. You know pollination. It is transfer of pollen grains. From where? You know pollen grains are present in the anther. From anther to where? To stigma. And the stigma belongs to which flower? That is important. To the stigma of another flower of a different plant of the same kind. Another flower of a different plant of the same kind. That is cross-pollination. Have you got it? Let me check whether you have understood. What is pollination, Meghna? What is pollination? Children, I'm repeating again. If the videos are off, I will have to remove you.
Ma'am, will you show the slide one more time?
I will repeat. I'll repeat. Surya, I think you need to call out the names. Lolita, Arjun, Surya, Johan, Haya, Sainaba. I will remove you. You don't make, I don't like to do it because I want all my students to attend the class. But if you're so adamant that you will not turn the video on, I'll be forced to do that. Lolita, first you turn the video on, then we'll speak. I don't want you to hide behind and speak to me. I know it is not the connectivity issue. And don't make me call your parents and find out whether you really have some net issues. Children, we are just struggling only for you. How many times you will make us say? Every day. And even that, in the same period, after every 10 minutes. And we get tired of saying this. How much time we are wasting? Arjun and Sainaba. Sainaba, I know that there is no connectivity issue that your parent had told me earlier. You turn it on. If you're worried so much about your looks, you present yourself neatly, you know, get dressed up or do all the makeup, no problem. You take your own time. But turn your video on. That is must. It is not optional. Don't make me say this again and again. Okay. So Arjun and Sainaba, you're not ready to turn it on. I didn't get any message also. So I think I can remove you from the group. Okay. So we'll continue, children. Who is going to tell me what is pollination? I asked someone, Nirupama, not Nirupama. Whom I asked? Meghna.
The transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma.
That is pollination. Okay. Now, what is self-pollination? Children, you make mistakes, no problem. But don't refer anywhere. Recollect what we discussed and try to say. Make mistakes, no problem. John, try know what is self-pollination. Slowly, slowly you can say. Break the sentence and then you can say. Okay.
Transfer of pollen grains from the.
Where are pollen grains present?
Stamen.
Which part of stamen? I told no, pass. Remember, pass. P-A-S. A stands for? A stands for? Anther.
Anther.
Okay. Begin again.
Transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the
pass. Stamen again.
Stigma.
No,
Stigma.
stigma.
The
The stigma of the same flower.
Or
another flower of the same plant.
very good. That is how you learn. You understand the meaning and learn. Prajot, tell me what is cross-pollination? Relax and say. We are here to help you. No, I will not eat you up. Yes.
Transfer of pollen grains from stigma.
Where are pollen grains present, Prajot?
From anther.
Anther to?
Stigma of one plant to
another
plant of same kind.
Another
flower
of
same kind.
In between you miss something. Another flower. This flower belongs to another plant. Okay, or else you can say to another flower. Stigma of another flower of a different plant of the same kind. Another different same. Another flower, different plant, same kind. Now try to repeat it.
Transfer of pollen grains from stigma
Where are pollen grains present? The part of
from
male.
anther from anther to stigma of one plant to another flower of different plant of the same kind.
Okay. So once you practice it, you will understand. Vishnu, can you hear me now? No. I got your message. Pratish, what is self-pollination, Pratish? Surya, let the window be open, no problem. You're going to say what is cross-pollination now. Pratish, what is self-pollination?
The transfer of pollen grains from the anther of a flower to the same anther of the.
Listen, Pratish. To where? From anther to where it should go, not again to anther. We need stigma of
the same plant.
Same flower. Or
same plant.
Same plant. Same flower means no need to say. Same
another flower of the same plant.
Same plant. Good. Okay. Surya, cross pollination. Surya went. Hearing my threatening, he went or what? Surya, are you there? Yes, you are there. I cannot make out your face, okay? But hairstyle is looking so nice. Okay, Surya, tell me the answer. Cross pollination. I'll help you. You just start. Only then I can help. No. Transfer of
cross pollination is the transfer of pollen grains from another.
From where? Think and say.
Anther of one flower to the stigma of another flower on a different individual.
Of a different plant. Different plant of the same
species.
Same species or same kind. Okay. Somehow you manage. I don't know if I ask again. So understand the concept, understand the meaning, and then learn. Don't simply by heart. Then you will get confused. Remember the picture. You can note down the picture also, no problem. Okay, let me continue. So that was about cross-pollination. And when you compare self and cross-pollination, variations will be more in case of cross-pollination. Because in cross-pollination, two different plants are involved. Even though they are of the same kind, two different plants are involved. So just like in human beings or in sexual reproduction, generally we say here there is fusion of gametes, so variations are more. Self and cross-pollination, both are types of sexual reproduction, or both will lead to sexual reproduction. But in self-pollination, just one plant is involved. And in cross-pollination, two plants are involved. So variation, the chances of variations are more for cross-pollination. And there are different agents to carry out cross-pollination. This you might have learned in lower classes. Maybe class 7 you have learned agents of pollination. Insects, animals, air, water, all these are different agents which will help in pollination. Means these organisms can carry pollen grains from the anther of one flower to the stigma of another flower. Say for example, insect. So from the when the insects come or when they land on the stigma of a flower to suck nectar, the pollen which had stuck to their body will get dusted on the stigma of another flower. Say for example, when the bug or the insect has landed on one flower, and during that time the pollen grains from that particular flower will stick to their hairy body. Again, when they land on the stigma of another flower, this can get dusted over there. Or wind can carry, water can carry, animals can carry. There are different agents of pollination. Now we are going to learn about fertilization. So general definition. Yes? Definition for fertilization you all know. You have learned. What is fertilization, Badra? Simple definition. What do you mean by fertilization?
Ma'am, the second point, will you say one more time?
Here the second point, I'll repeat. Bhadra, tell me, what is meant by fertilization?
Then that
Fusion of?
fusion of gametes,
Specify the gametes, male and
female gametes,
to form a?
zygote.
That's it. Fertilization is the fusion of male and female gametes to form a zygote. And somebody had asked for the second point. Second point is that cross-pollination promote better chances of variation. So variation means what? Some changes in the characters. Like self and cross-pollination, both will, in both cases, gametes are fusing. Male and female gametes are fusing in both cases. Self and cross-pollination. But in self-pollination, it is limited to just one plant. So variations will be less. Whereas in cross-pollination, two different plants are involved. When two different plants are involved, chances of variations will be more. Was that Hadidi who asked me? Who had that doubt? Okay, is it clear now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so when in cross-pollination, two different plants are involved. Whereas in self-pollination, only one plant is involved. So when you compare self and cross-pollination will promote to more variations. Okay, children. Now I'll proceed to the next one, that is fertilization. Already Bhadra said it's a fusion of gametes, male and female gametes, to form a zygote. And zygote will divide. Zygote, how many cells are there in a zygote? Savio, how many cells in a zygote?
23 pairs.
I'm not able to follow you. Can you repeat it again? How many? 1, 2, 3, many. Which is the correct option? Many.
Yes, many.
Many. So zygote will have many cells. Melvin, how many cells are there in a zygote? I'm not able to hear you properly, children. Melvin?
3.
3. Okay. Then any other answer?
1.
Who said 1? Who told 1? Savio. 1, 2, 3. So many answers I got. Children, how is a zygote formed? Hadidi, how is a zygote formed?
Fusion of male and female.
Fusion of male
and female. Vishnupriya is saying 46. Vishnupriya, 46 chromosomes. I asked the number of cells, not chromosomes. Number of cells. How many cells?
2.
I'm up.
1 cell.
1. How many are saying 1?
3.
2.
Ma'am, 2.
2, 3, 4. Children, what we learned just now, fusion. Upon fusing, they'll become one, no? Male and female gametes fuse. So that means it becomes 1. 2 cell, I don't know, how did you get the 3 cells? Somebody said 3 cells. Okay, Surya, correct. Because male gamete, female gamete, both are fusing. And upon fusing, they will form a single cell. Zygote is having only 1 cell. An embryo? Embryo, how many cells?
2 cells.
Zygote 1 cell. Then let embryo have 2 cells, no?
1
cell.
Multi-cell.
Children, listen. We know that once zygote is formed, it will change into embryo. And it is, if you take the case of human beings, it is from the embryo that we all are born. If it is just 1 cell, can we grow? Can we develop into a new individual?
3 cells.
Zygote will undergo division. And first it will form 2, then 4, 8, 16. It will form a mass of cells. Embryo is multicellular. These are basics, children. These all you had learned in class 8. Differences between zygote and embryo. This you had learned in class 8. If you have the textbook still with you, you can refer it. Zygote is single cell. and embryo is multicellular. Zygote will undergo repeated divisions and they will form multicellular embryo. And here we are speaking about a plant, a flower, and the embryo will be present inside the ovule. And now you should know, where is ovule present? Okay. So zygote will change into or develop into zygote a single cell. They will undergo repeated division and they will form embryo. This embryo is present inside the ovule. Now next question, where is ovule present? Ovule is present inside ovary. Ovary is a part of? It's a part of?
Female flower.
Once again.
Flower.
Very simple, no? Very easy. You tell me specifically, male or female part?
Female.
Female part. What do you call the female part? It's a part of pistil or carpel. Pistil has got 3 parts. Melvin, which are the 3 parts of pistil? Melvin?
Yes, ma'am.
Which are the 3 parts of a pistil?
Stamen.
Stamen is male part, dear. Stamen, men for male, male part. All these I had told. If you don't know or if you haven't revised the previous day's portions, how can we proceed? It's a simplest topic which you had been learning from class 7. Unless you understand what has taught the previous day, how can I proceed, children? Simple question and simple answers too. Which are the 3 parts of pistil? Melvin, I want the answer from you. Stamen is male part. Pistil is female part. Stamen, the male part has got anther and filament. Pistil has got 3 parts, main 3 parts.
Ovary.
Somebody helped you. Ovary. What's the message you got now? Ovary, then
Stigma.
Style, stigma, and ovary. Don't disappoint me like this. When you answer properly, I get motivated. But when you are not able to answer or you say such blunders, I get demotivated, children. Okay, now listen. I'll just draw it here. And what I'm drawing is a pistil. So this is
Ma'am, you
stigma.
also had the screen.
Oh, can you see? Can you
No,
see
ma'am.
the screen? Okay. Just a minute, just a minute. Now can you see?
Yes, ma'am.
Stigma, then style. This part is ovary. And inside the ovary, ovule is present. Inside the ovary, ovule. And inside the ovule, what is present? Inside the ovule. Hadidi. What will be formed inside the ovule? Just now we said. What will be formed? Embryo. Zygote will undergo division and form embryo. I think in between your relay is getting cut off, just like your net connectivity. 5 minutes relay will be there, 15 minutes relay won't be there. Some sort of distractions are going on. I don't think this is a very tough topic. Easiest topic in biology. One of the most easiest topics in biology is this one. If you're not able to follow it, I think it is because of the lack of concentration. No other reason. Because even just by reading, you don't need any explanation also for this. Okay. So stigma, style, ovary, these are the 3 main parts of pistil. Inside the ovary, ovule is present, and inside the ovule, embryo will be formed. And I told you how embryo is formed. Once male and female gametes fuse, they will form a zygote. The single-celled zygote will undergo repeated division and it will form an embryo inside the ovule. Then gradually from this embryo, a new individual will be formed. Zygote, embryo, and finally a new individual will be formed from this embryo. Okay, can I change?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Completed? Fusion of male and female gametes to form a zygote is fertilization. Zygote undergoes repeated divisions and forms an embryo, and from this embryo, the new individual will be formed. Okay, children. Now what yes. Now what I'm going to explain, you may not find in your textbook. But listen carefully, note it down in your lecture notes, because only then you will understand the concept better. So I have included this part. You will not find in the textbook, but this is a base. In higher classes, you will be learning more about it. But I thought I'll just include that also so that you can understand it better. Once the pollen grain lands on the stigma, that process is pollination. We already learned pollination is the process by which pollen grain lands on the stigma. And where is the egg present? Egg is present inside the ovary, inside the ovule. Okay. So pollen grain, children listen carefully. You know, pollen grain is having male gametes. Male gametes are present in the pollen grain. Each pollen grain will have 2 male gametes. Now for fertilization to happen, this should fuse with female gamete or egg. And this female gamete or egg is present inside the ovule. Okay. Pollen is landing on the stigma. Remaining on the stigma, fertilization cannot happen. Stigma leads into style, style leads into ovary, inside the ovary ovule, inside the ovule egg is there. So pollen grains contain male gametes and these male gametes should reach the egg. Only then fertilization can happen. And how the pollen grains can reach there? For that, the pollen, once it starts on the stigma, it will germinate and they will produce a tube. See here you can see the tube. Why tube is needed? Because only with the help of this tube, they can reach the ovule. See here, the pollen is falling here on the stigma, but the egg cell is there down. So it has to reach here. So for that, pollen tube will act like a bridge to transport the male gametes to the egg cell. Only then fertilization can happen. So once pollen grain lands on the stigma, next step is germination of pollen grain and formation of pollen tube. Hope you are following. Once pollen lands on the stigma, that is pollination. Pollen landing on stigma. If pollination has to be followed by, or if it has to be continued as fertilization, then the pollen should germinate and form a pollen tube. Only with the help of a pollen tube, the male gametes, see through this, the male gametes will be transported to the egg cell. The pollen tube will grow through the tissues of stigma and style because it has to reach the ovule. Why it has to reach the ovule? Because it is inside the ovule that egg cell is present. The pollen tube will grow through stigma and style, reaches the ovule. And once it reaches the ovule, it will transfer the male gamete and the male and female gamete will fuse together. And some more additional points, as I already told you. I will explain it. On the right hand side, you can see the picture of an embryo sac. It's not mentioned in your textbook, and don't worry about the names mentioned over there. I'll just explain it, and it's not needed from the examination point of view, but just to make you understand the concept, I've included it. So this is embryo sac. This is embryo sac, and this embryo sac is inside the ovule. Ovary, inside ovary, ovule, inside ovule, embryo sac. Inside embryo sac, egg is present. Okay. Once again, ovary is a part of pistil, that is a female part. Inside ovary, ovule, inside ovule, embryo sac, inside embryo sac, egg cell is present. But inside this embryo sac, not only egg cell is present, there are so many other cells. So here, this is the embryo sac present inside the ovule. This is the egg cell. But apart from that, you can see so many other cells. 2 polar nuclei in the center, 2 synergids on either side of the egg cell, and 3 antipodal cells on the other end. 8 of 3, 4, 5, 7 are there. 8 nuclei. These are 2 polar nuclei. So you can see 3 antipodals, 2 polar nuclei, and 2 synergids along with the egg cell. Once again, for those who haven't understood, I'll be explaining it in the next class also. We have less time. I'll just explain it again. Pollen will land on the stigma. Remaining on the stigma, fertilization cannot happen because the pollen is having male gametes. The male gametes should reach the ovule. There the egg cell is present. Where is the egg cell present? Inside the ovule. Or else you can say ovary, inside ovary, ovule, inside ovule, embryo sac, inside embryo sac, egg cell is present. Ovary, ovule, embryo sac, egg cell. And inside the embryo sac, not only egg cell, so many other cells are there. I told 3 antipodals, 2 synergids. Names you don't have to learn. 2 synergids, 3 antipodals, 2 polar nuclei along with the egg cell. And to reach this egg cell, the pollen will germinate and produces a pollen tube which will grow towards the egg cell. And once the pollen tube reaches the egg cell, the gametes will be released and fusion will take place, which we will discuss next class. So the last part, if you haven't understood, not to worry, I'll repeat it again. But children, don't be absent. And once you join, you have to be very attentive and turn the video on so that we can monitor whether you are attending or not. Let me take the...
Thank you.
See you next class. We'll be continuing with sexual reproduction in flowering plants in the next class. Any doubts, please let me know. Okay, thank you, children. Thank you.